It was being compared to the Ultra Glide quite a bit, and the number one complaint that different reviewers had on the Ultra Glide:
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
And yes, there you have it, guys. Today we are talking about the Salomon Pulsar Trail. My name is Matt, and this is What Matters to Matt. Now, if you have been watching my channel, you might be thinking, why is Matt reviewing a trail running shoe? Isn't he somebody who does the majority of his training on the roads, training for marathons and different things like that? And you would be right, but what I did do, if you've been watching a little bit more closely, I did put out a video a while ago where I talked about wanting to spend more time on the trails because I felt like there were a lot of benefits to trail running, and I wanted to add that variety to my training. And also as I spend more time in this shoe, spend more time on the trails, I am having a lot of fun. So I'm thinking probably for the future that might affect what I'm going to be training for going forward into future years, into next year, maybe even past this fall's marathon training season. Who knows? That's a little ways away, but yes, today we are talking about the Salomon Pulsar Trail. I'm going to go over the specs, then I'm going to talk about exactly why I bought this shoe, because I don't have a whole lot of extra money kicking around to spend on shoes, and I don't have shoe companies throwing shoes at me for free. So every time that I make a purchase, I make an informed decision. I go out there and listen to other reviews. I read up on the different shoes out there, and I try to pick a shoe that's going to fit well into my rotation. So we're going to cover off why I bought this particular shoe, and then we're just going to go from upper to midsole to outsole and talk about the different aspects of the shoe and what I liked and what kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop in terms of what I was surprised about with the Salomon Pulsar Trail. All right, to start off with some of the specs for this shoe. Now, I weighed my shoe. Keep in mind that I have a men's US size 12.5 in my hand, and it is 344 grams, and the listed US men's size 9 comes in at 280 grams. There is a 6 millimeter drop with 32.6 millimeters in the heel and 26.6 millimeters in the forefoot. The midsole is made up of Salomon's Energy Surge foam, which is a combo of EBA and OBC. We also have the Energy Blade in that midsole, which is Salomon's TPU plate. The lacing system is Salomon's Quick Lace system, and the outsole is Contagrip rubber, which is found on several different shoes from Salomon. Now we have to cover off two things when it comes to why I bought this shoe. First off, if you're like me and you spend a lot of time on the roads, you do the majority of your training on the roads, and you're just looking to dabble off into the trails, do you actually need a trail running shoe? No, you don't really need a trail running shoe, and I actually didn't have one for quite a few runs on the trails. For a couple of years, I spent some time running on some trails. Light trails, nothing too technical, and road shoes worked out really well. But eventually I got to a point where I wanted some more grip to go on some more technical terrain, get out there when it was a little bit wet, a little bit muddy, and also I wanted more protection up here in the toe box, and I just wanted the overall quality that often comes with trail running shoes in terms of not beating up my road shoes too much when I wanted to get out there on the trails. Secondly, let's talk about why I bought the Salomon Pulsar Trail specifically. Well, I'm somebody who's spending a lot more time on the trails now and mixing that into my training, and actually I've gotten to a point where I'm thinking about doing a lot more trail races, and the Salomon Pulsar Trail seemed to really fit that bill if I wanted to do a lot more trail specific training. I needed something that was a little bit of a tweener, something that could be a road to trail shoe, something that could handle a decent amount of terrain, and something that had quite a bit of cushion, not just for those long runs, but also in my current use case where I'm out there on the trails and a lot of those easy runs, recovery runs. So I'm giving the legs a little bit of a break, the body a little bit of a break from the pounding of the roads. So it just made sense that I got something that had a decent amount of cushioning in the midsole, and really those are kind of some of the main reasons why I went with the Salomon Pulsar Trail. Hi guys, I hope you're enjoying this video so far. If you are not subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. Hit that subscribe button right down below. It's free to you and it motivates me so much to see that there are more people out there that are interested in me sharing my running journey with them to run a little bit faster and a little bit farther. Now let's start with the upper, and first thing I'm going to do, and this is a little bit of a shout out to Run Tall with Tim, I'm going to throw the shoe up on my shoulder and do a little bit of a pinch test back here on the heel collar, around the heel, and it is pretty stout in the heel. You're not getting a whole lot of flex here, and I enjoy that, especially in a trail running shoe. One of the things as a road runner, and especially when I'm on tired marathon training legs, is the roots and rocks and all that stuff, and really worried about my heel shifting around, and that hasn't been a problem. It inspires a lot of confidence to have a fairly stiff heel here. Also, around that heel collar, there is a decent amount of padding, and if I was to have one complaint on this shoe, or at least one of the complaints I do have on this shoe, if we can really call it a complaint, because it's a good thing and a bad thing, is there is a decent amount of padding. Probably a little bit more than I would like in most of my shoes, but I do find it incredibly comfortable. But it has been a little bit warm, and I was out on a couple of runs where it took on a little bit of extra water and took a little bit more time than I'd like to dry. But that's kind of a minor complaint, because you give that up for some extra comfort, especially if you're going to be taking this shoe on longer runs, which I plan on doing quite a bit of. There is a semi-gusted tongue here, and there's also a decent amount of padding that's evenly spaced in the tongue. Very comfortable. With this quick lace system that Salomon has and the padding in that tongue, I have no hot spot concerns whatsoever, or no pressure point concerns whatsoever when it comes to the lacing system offering pressure points in the top of my foot. Also, this quick lace system, the one thing I did want to mention about this, first of all, this is the first time I've owned a shoe. I've run in a few shoes with them, but owned a shoe with the quick lace system, and I am enjoying it. It took me a little bit of time to get used to, but it works perfectly fine. Do I prefer it over a traditional lacing system? It doesn't really matter to me. I think on a trail running shoe, there's some added benefits there. But the one thing I did want to talk about is this little lace garage. I don't know if Salomon calls it that, but right up here in the top of the tongue, this lace garage where you tuck away, that now I'm struggling with right now, but that's because I'm just holding this up in the air. It's not on my foot. But where you tuck away that extra lace after you're all cinched up. The other shoe, when you're looking at this shoe that comes up quite often, was the Salomon, or is the Salomon Ultra Glide. And one of the couple of complaints, and I'll talk about a couple of them that reviewers seem to have with the Ultra Glide that you might think would carry over to this shoe, is the ability to tuck that up in there. Once you have it cinched up, it kind of gets under the top laces and becomes hard to tuck in. I haven't had that problem with this shoe, and I tried on the Ultra Glide, and I think the difference for me was the tongue in this seems just a little bit longer. This is shifted up ever so slightly more, so that's not a problem. Is that a huge deal to me? Would that change my buying decision choice between this and the Ultra Glide? Probably not. An extra minute or an extra little fiddling to get the lacing in there, not a big deal. Very small price to pay. The other thing I want to talk about with this upper that I had a little bit of a concern with when I first bought this shoe was one of the spots. Now, I don't have a particularly wide foot, but Salomon's traditionally are pretty narrow. They call this their standard width, not their narrow width in terms of their different shoes, but I still wouldn't call it a wide shoe at all. It's still going to be narrower than probably your average standard width in a lot of other brands. And if I'm ever going to get a hot spot in any shoe, it's usually out here around the pinky toe, out here. And with that extra protection in the toe, when I first put the shoe on, I could feel that pressure. Oftentimes I do in a lot of shoes that I feel fit me well. I do feel a little tiny bit of pressure there, but it eases up quite a bit because the material stretches out. And with the protection in the toe box, I was a little bit worried that it wasn't going to do that. I'm happy to report, though, when I get out there on the runs, I haven't really felt that at all. So it's been super comfortable for me overall in terms of the upper, in terms of the fit. Let's move on to talking a little bit about that midsole. All right, so now we get to talk about that midsole, and that is where all the magic happens, as it does with a lot of different shoes. And there are a couple of different things I want to point out about this midsole, starting with that decent 32.6 millimeter stack that we have in the heel of the Energy Surge foam that comes in this shoe. Now, this was the biggest concern I had when I was buying this shoe because, again, it was being compared to the Ultra Glide quite a bit. And the number one complaint that different reviewers had on the Ultra Glide was that the midsole foam tended to deaden out, flatten out quite a bit on them, even when they had less than 100 miles in the shoe, that it wasn't feeling anything like when it came out of the box, that it was an absolute joy to run in when they first got the shoe, but it flattened out quite quickly. I'm happy to report I haven't had that same problem with this shoe, the Salomon Pulsar Trail. It seems to be still pretty soft. Can I tell a difference from when I first ran in the shoe? Maybe, but honestly, I don't have concerns in terms of that deadening out before I get the chance to put lots of miles in the shoe. If you stick around when I do a review and I stack on hundreds and hundreds of miles into it, I'll probably do a little bit of a follow-up just to give you an update on how it's going. But so far, really good and liking that foam. It's soft and energetic. The other thing I want to talk about is this energy blade. Now, a lot of companies in trail running have started putting TPU plates or carbon plates into their shoes, and Salomon has gone with a TPU plate in this shoe, and the shape of it is decently unique, and I don't know if that's why it works out so well for me. I did have concerns, which I think a lot of different trail runners may have had, with how that would affect how the shoe ran when it came to roots and rocks and everything. I haven't had an issue with that at all. And where I really seem to notice the difference is when I'm running uphill. I get a really good amount of energy return from this shoe. So I think between that energy blade and that Energy Surge midsole, this has offered me a good, solid, responsive trail running shoe. Let's move on to talking about that outsole. So now that we're talking about this outsole, if you are familiar with Salomon shoes, you'd be familiar with the Salomon Contagrip. I keep saying Contagrip, it's Contagrip. I think I just played way too much Nintendo in the 80s. But if you are familiar with this outsole and this type of grip, it's what you'd expect. It's tacky, it's soft, it grips in wet conditions quite well, it grips on those rocks quite well, and with the 3.5 millimeter lug depth, I found that to be just about where it needs to be for me in terms of how aggressive this lug pattern is and how aggressive these lugs are. As I mentioned at the beginning of this review, I was looking for a little bit of a tweener, and this outsole provides that for me regardless of what terrain I'm on. I have a lot of confidence in my ability to take on more technical terrain, but it's also not too intrusive when I'm out there running on very hard pack or very easy trails, or even some road to trail runs that I do. So outsole has served me really, really well so far in this shoe. Okay, so has this shoe been worth my hard-earned money? Am I happy with this purchase? And I am very pleased to say that I am incredibly happy with this purchase. I think it fits into my shoe rotation really, really well. As I get out there, as I spend more time on the trails, I think it's going to really help me when I look at taking on longer trail running races in the future. This has been a shoe that's worked out incredibly well for me. That's it, guys. My name is Matt, and this is What Matters to Matt, and ultimately what matters to me most is my family. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.